Thank you all for joining us. It looks like we have a nice range of people here from all over the world. And we get to welcome Eric Pfeifer, Dr. Eric Pfeifer from Vienna, Austria. He is actually from the mountains of Austria, Schruns, correct, Eric?
Ah,
And so we're particularly fortunate because he is not only a psychotherapist, he's also he studied music therapy, and he brings the two together today. He's a university professor both at the Catholic University in Freiburg. He's also at the Sigmund Freud University in Vienna. And so we welcome you. It's an honor to have you.
thank you very much. It's also a great honor for me to be allowed to be part of this wonderful conference. I'd say it's a wonderful topic I'm allowed to talk to you all about. And I just, whenever Frank to give a speech at the conference, he always opted for a cup of coffee before doing it, in order to get ready. And whenever he couldn't have a cup of coffee, he went for a caffeine pills. I chose to go for a bar of chocolate today, so I hope I'm ready and you are too. And let's talk about the wonderful topic of music therapy and logotherapy. Um, I just put together for you the main parts that we could talk about. Basically, I'd like to give you an overview on music therapy, the field of music health and well-being, and the context of bringing the two together, music and meaning in life, and logotherapy. And as some of you might know, Viktor Frankl was very interested in music, so I'd like to talk about that a little bit. And then let's move over to more clinical stuff, diving into palliative care, the three meanings, the three pathways to meaning in life, but already connected to music, and exemplified by a case example. Um, so, first of all, what is music therapy? And I try to rely on a definition given by the Canadian Association of Music Therapy. Basically, music therapy is a very old and a very, a discipline with a long tradition in the field of music health and well-being. And it can be described as a discipline that uses music deliberately within a therapeutic relationship to support the development and health and well-being. A very easy definition. But we could also say that music therapy is practice-oriented and science-oriented. And it's closely related to other scientific disciplines like psychotherapy, psychology, medicine. As far as we have a look at the German Music Therapy Society and the definition, it says that music therapy is quite closely related to the four main concepts of psychotherapy too. Let's move on to the huge field of music health and well-being. Some of you might already heard that there is a big review that was created by the World Health Organization in 2019. This review contains more than 1,000 individual studies, and it is on the role of the arts in improving health and well-being. And the authors, Fancourt and Finn, found out that there is a strong impact of the arts on health and well-being. And fortunately, as far as I'm concerned, I'm allowed to say that the music and music therapy are named approximately 20 times more frequently than other art forms such as dance, painting, etc. But unfortunately, in life is not part of it, and there is no mention of logotherapy and existential analysis in combination with music or music therapy within this report, unfortunately. So, but can we find something or anything that's related and combines music and meaning empirical approaches? Yes, we can. But first of all, let's get back to what Frankl said, that if we take meaning, the will to meaning as the prime motivation in human life, that's what Frankl said, we could also add, as far as empirical research is concerned, that there are correlations between meaning in life and mental health. In so far as we might put it this way, that a human is mentally healthy in as much as this person is able to realize meaning in his life. If we take this as a foundation, let's have a look on the combination of music, health, and well-being. And there are studies, for example, by Rutledge and colleagues, and they found out that if we read nostalgic song lyrics or if we listen to music, this correlates with meaning in life, as easy as that. In Freiburg, we have already conducted several studies on the perception of silence in different conditions and settings, like in the forest, in city gardens, indoors, outdoors, and found out that there are strong correlations between relaxation, meaning in life, oneness beliefs, and positive emotions. Just by having 6.5 minutes of silence and listening to that kind of silence framed and guided by a therapist. By the way, as a side project, we did a German language validation of the Meaning in Life questionnaire that you might know because it's a very famous measure for meaning in life. How about now logotherapy and music therapy? Before it was music and logotherapy, now it's music therapy and logotherapy. Having a look at the situation in Austria and Germany, just as two examples, we can say that in Austria and Germany, the music therapy education is strongly linked to psychotherapy principles. And that it is said a music therapist during his training has also to learn about all 4 basic modalities in psychotherapy. But if we have a look on the given literature, the available literature, we can say that there is hardly any publications available that combines music therapy and logotherapy, unfortunately. There is analytical music therapy, depth psychological music therapy, behavioral music therapy, but there's hardly anything available on logotherapy and music therapy until now, unfortunately. But interestingly, Frankl was very much into music. So if we take and have a look at the famous documentary by Alexander Vesely, Frankl's grandson, we can't see a picture with the documentary showing Frankl playing guitar. So one might raise the question whether Frankl was a guitar player. Who knows? I've never ever had the chance to ask Alexander Vesely regarding that. But there is some more. Frankl always put an emphasis on the importance of music in his personal and professional life. And that's quite similar to other pioneers in psychotherapy, such as Carl Gustav Jung, Heinz Kohut, Wilhelm Reich, and Alfred Adler. All of these guys had an interest in music as far as their professional and personal lives were concerned. A few examples. Frankl stated that he actually you can find several passages in his writings about the artistic and creative powers of the unconscious. For example, he once said that the unconscious is much more musical than the conscious. A very interesting quote. And in one of his last book, The Last Ad, was published during his lifetime in 1995, unfortunately only in German language. He remembers a lullaby that his mother always sang to him that was very important for him as a child. So music did play an important part. And some of you might know, some might not, that Frankl also composed music. There is, for example, a performance of a tango that you can still access and see within YouTube videos. And here is on the right side of the slide, there is a bit of an excerpt of the score of that tango that Frankl had composed. And he was once asked in an interview, Professor Frankl, you're a famous psychotherapist, you're a psychologist. And now you started to compose music. How come? Are you a universal genius? And he laughed and said, no, not at all. If you want to call me something like universal, then I must be a universal dilettante. So, and that was very important. But he liked to do music and he liked to compose, and he also used music imagination exercises to enlighten the importance of music along the three pathways to meaning. And I always found interesting that he said necessary skills for psychotherapists are the unbiased listening into the soul of the person entrusting himself, herself to the psychotherapist, and the ability to be sharp-eared. It's so strongly linked to music, the way he puts these skills into words. Okay, let's move over now from music and music therapy, music and logotherapy, to the importance of meaning in life in palliative care. I just picked up two studies. First, the focus on the patient side. Meaning in life appears to be something very important as a protective factor against psychological distress at the end of life. And there is a strong need for the development of meaning-oriented methods, interventions, tailored to the fragility of palliative actions. So there's a strong need for meaning-oriented approaches on the patient side in palliative care, but also on the side of the caregivers. Exactly the same on the other side, there is a strong need for meaning-oriented interventions for carers during palliative care, and there the palliative carer's health is strongly associated with well-being if there is meaning in life. A very important aspect of meaning in life in palliative care, just as a foundation for the next part of it, namely how to link music, meaning in life, and palliative care. Next step is, as we all know, Frankl highlighted three pathways to meaning in life. I wanted to show you how this could be combined with music. First, I've got the creative values, as you might know. Frankl said the anthropological symbol here is the Homo faber, the working human. The dimension is the physical dimension of human being. The principles are activity, productivity. That means Frankl said if we create something, if we do a deed, that's part of the creative values. How can this be linked to music? Actually, it's very, very easy. Whenever we do active music, whenever we create something musical, whenever we play an instrument, whenever we support our patients in logotherapy or psychotherapy with a way of music, in that they can do some music on their own as by the therapist, or whenever you might know it by yourself, you might go through hard times, but maybe you're playing an instrument, you're going through a crisis, but it helps you to play the piano. It helps you to sing some songs together with others. It makes you feel better. It helps you to get something meaningful out of it. Then the creative values are addressed by active music making or methods that belong to active music therapy. We have got the experiential values. The anthropological symbol is the Homo amans, the loving human. The dimension is the psychological, the mental one. The principles are now not productivity rather than receptivity, emotionality, contemplation, and devotion. Again, it's very easy. If we fully immerse into music, if we are touched by listening to a very specific song or famous piece of music, if we go into a concert, We know there's our favorite band on stage or something that we really like to listen to, and it's our most famous and favorite song that we can just listen to right now being on a concert. It might be so touching, it might be so important to us. And also, during times of crisis, listening to music might be something very important. And in music therapy, we have good specific methods that we can apply and use directly on the receptive side of it, working with a patient. Finally, that might be the most difficult one. The attitudinal values, whenever there is irreversible suffering. Frankl said it's all about the homo patiens, the suffering human. The dimension then is the noetic, the spiritual one. And the principles are then the attitude, the stance toward this kind of irreversible suffering or stroke of fate. Here might not be a specific deed or a specific activity or a specific method that can be applied, rather than seeing music therapy itself as a frame, as a container, as a companion, as a partner during these times of irreversible suffering. Music can provide a space for us. And within this space, it's possible to develop a new stance or attitude towards suffering. I will enlighten that by a case example later on. So all three avenues to meaning can be supported by music and can be approached and maybe conducted by accompanying music and music therapy. We can now use Frankl's own words, for highlighting music within the three pathways of meaning and to meaning. Of course, he said, we can give meaning to our lives by creating a work. Yeah, he already mentioned, and he also mentioned and meant music within this pathway. Eric quotes by Frankl, he relating to the experiential values, he tried and he always liked to use imaginative tasks and exercises with his lecture participants, just imagining being part of a concert, listening to the very special tone sounds of the favorite music. And that might be a very important support for fulfilling meaning. And he always said something like experiential values arise as we enjoy or participate in the value of beautiful music. But there are quotes and passages in Frankl's writings that also address the attitudinal values. I'm quite sure you know the first one of his most famous observations during his time in concentration camp, when he described the way his human or just prisoners in the concentration camps were sent into the crematories. And he said and observed that some of them had a prayer on the lips. Others were just using poems. And then there's one time he said, others had the Marseillaise, the French national hymn, on their lips. So again, he showed how important music was to frame, to hold a new attitude, to give birth maybe to a new attitude in how to take a fatal stroke and how to behave towards a fatal stroke. And then there is another case example in Frankl's writings where he tells about a young man suffering from tuberculosis, going to die because of that. And there is a very specific part in the description of this young man, and he said, well, What can I do? I know I'm going to die. And on one evening, this young guy was listening to Bruckner's Fourth Romantic Symphony, and somehow he fully immersed into listening to the symphony. And afterwards, he said, well, something has changed. He totally developed a new kind of attitude towards his own suffering. So music could be a space giving birth to a new stance, to a new attitude regarding irreversible suffering. And that's something we could apply in logotherapy and we could rely on and in music therapy too. So just a brief case example, taken out of my own practice. I was introduced once to a a woman. She was approximately 60 years old, and she had been diagnosed with cancer recently. By the time I got to know her, that was the reason why she chose to get into psychotherapy. And at the very beginning of our sessions, she once at a specific moment she said to me, because she was a psychoanalyst with a wonderful own practice, and she said to me, Mr. Pfeiffer, you know, psychoanalysis is here. And she just put her fingers on top of her head. She wanted to say it's a very intellectual thing. But at the end of my life, I'd like to go here. And she placed her hand softly quite close to her heart. We know that there's not that much time left because cancer was metastasizing and she knew she's going to die because of her cancer. And at the very beginning of our therapeutic process, she wanted to incorporate the art and music. What we did is we used music. She was dancing, she was playing instruments, and it was a combination of logotherapy and music therapy, or logotherapy with music. We could place it like that. And she was using instruments, she was singing, she was dancing. She wanted to be the creative child. She wanted to be active, productive. And that somehow gave meaning to her life in this stage of the process. It was the creative values. Not long after that, things got worse. And she had to move to palliative station in a clinic and was not able to visit me in my practice. So I started to visit her in the palliative ward of the clinic. And she was now in bed. She couldn't move that much anymore, but music was still very important to her. And we used the vibro acoustic stimulus of instruments. You can feel music. And somehow that was very important for her because music made her relax, the quality of music, the vibration of the instruments. And she wanted to listen to music. And we chose what kind of music could be good for you today. And that was, the experiential values that gave meaning to her life, that could be fulfilled. You might know, you might guess, a few weeks later, things got even worse, and she got strong medicals. She got strong medication in order to be able to cope with her suffering, her pain. And this time, as part of this step of the process, she wasn't even able to stay awake for quite some moments, and she fell asleep quite often. But still, she wanted to be music part of her process. And then the sounds, she could tell me, I wanted to have this sound. She gave me a shy smile when I chose the right instrument for her. And music was kind of frame that made it more easy for her to care and to cope with her suffering. It was just a frame, a space of music that somehow was very important for her. A little bit later, I got back one day to the clinic. I went to the nursery station ward, and they told me that she had died the night before. Well, it was kind of shock for me, and I just visited her room that was empty then, and I took some time and got back home. And 2 weeks later, I phone called her husband, and her husband told me, well, um, her wife that music was very important for her during the last phase of her life. And I felt like I was so delighted and amazed and touched by that. And I feel like within this case example in palliative care, it was possible to go from creative values to experiential values to attitudinal values that could be fulfilled in logotherapy assisted by music. So this was that part. What can we say finally? Maybe take home message. We can say that yes, the three pathways of meaning fulfillment can happen by assistance of music. Music could be a strong part within that, a strong ally, maybe. We could also say that whenever meaninglessness, feelings of meaninglessness, hopelessness, irreversible suffering is taking center stage in therapeutic processes, but the verbal part might not be the best one. Creative stuff could help. Art-based approaches in logotherapy are a wonderful addition to logotherapy. What else can we say? The potential of combined logotherapy and music therapy are rich in order to incorporate them in times of global crises and palliative care, for example, in clinical context. And finally, yes, the combination of music and meaning and logotherapy is a lot of methods we already have got in logotherapy and psychotherapy in general. So I like to close with something in light of the happenings in today's world. Well, we could maybe see music, the art in general, as something that is strongly related to culture. And I hope it's fine for you if I quote Sigmund Freud now, not Frankl first. And you might know the correspondence between Sigmund Freud and Einstein in 1993. Why war? And Freud said, well, whenever we produce culture, it is also working against war. And I strongly feel that incorporating music in psychotherapy is doing culture and it is work against war. But Freud is one thing, of course, I'd like to close with Frankl. You all know the quote, the fact remains that we cannot show a patient what in a given situation the meaning is, but he or she may well show the patient that there is a meaning, and as we shall see, that life not only holds a meaning, a unique meaning for each and every man, woman, but also never ceases to hold such a meaning, retaining it literally up to the last moment, to one's last breath. And I would say in clinical contexts like palliative care, we could assist that by incorporating music. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. It'll take a while to digest all of that. I particularly appreciate your case study. It's these are the incidents, the case studies allow us to make real what we're talking about as logotherapists. Who's got questions? Let me
Thank you very much.
expand out my view here. You can just raise your hand if you have a question. We'd love to have your participation.
Thank you for the message in the chat. Thank you very much. Welcome. I'm so happy I made it in time. Please ask whatever questions you've got, whatever idea, whatever experience you might share. I'm very happy hear from you or read from you.
Well, Eric, let me ask something here. I was moved at the beginning part about one sort of component of your presentation, Frankl with the guitar, right? And part of what I was moved by is I've spent a decent amount of time trying to understand the leisure activities of Viktor Frankl and how he uses free time activities, in therapies and so forth. So, how much do you know about that? Because I thought maybe that's a question to ask Alex Vesey, right? Because I think what I've read is that most people that summarize Frankl's leisure, and they always go to rock climbing, flying airplanes. And yes, he loved the arts and he loved music, which you outlined very well. But I wonder how much he just did on an everyday basis. Like, did he pick up the guitar and just sort of play it at times and had fun with it and so forth and dabbled in things? So I'm curious how much you know about the guitar playing and if there's wisdom. I've already sent a question that I want them to ask Alex Vesey, if there's wisdom in you asking that question.
Well, to be honest, I don't know whether he was a guitar player. I'd love to know about that. I could ask some of his famous or most popular pupils like Elisabeth Lucas or Uwe Büschemeyer, or the ones that were his first generation pupils over here, and I'm quite sure they might know. But I guess he must have had some practice and practice him, because you can't compose a tango or whatever kind of music you'd like to compose if you don't have got any if you haven't got any practice, and it might need some regular training. But I do know that besides going climbing and besides flying airplanes, I know that he was a very important partner playing with his daughter. So he was somebody who was really into family life too. And I guess he might have played music with or to his daughter too, but I don't know exactly about that. I'd love to know more about that. Um, at least we can read about about his interest in music, and that's quite something. Um, Sorry,
No,
don't
you
know
did
that
great.
much more.
No. So I will contact you after the conference. All right. I'll get your email and I'll contact you, and maybe we can sort of look and try to explore some of these
Yeah,
more so. Yeah.
yeah, I'd be very much interested in doing so. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. And thank you for a wonderful presentation.
I'm just going through the messages that have been placed within the chat.
Dr. Pfeiffer, I have my hand raised.
Okay. Yeah, please.
Yes,
Sorry, I missed that, Tom. Go ahead.
that's quite all right. And again, I very much enjoyed the presentation. I have my wife here with me, who is also a minister, and she's our music minister, choral director, and so on. So very, very interested in your presentation and enjoyed it very much. I have a presentation I'm doing on Saturday, which relates to implementation of logotherapy into pastoral care. I draw from the statements in Man's Search for Ultimate Meaning and other places where Frankl talks about how this inner religious sense can break through despite psychosis, despite neurosis, and so forth. And one of my key examples was my own grandmother, who was in palliative care. And at the end of her life, she was more or less in a morphine-induced delirium because of the pain and so forth. One thing that I noticed, that even though her mind was all over the place, different ages, different time periods of her life, and scattered, when she would sing, she sang every word and every note of the song that she sang. It's like the mind was not intact, the reality was not intact, but the song was intact. So I just wanted to see if you had any thoughts and comments about that.
Thank you very much. I do, whenever I work with people like in psychiatry, patients suffering from psychosis, as you said, maybe we could say that the noetic dimension was still intact, right? And music is a wonderful ally to get in touch with that kind of intact noetic dimension. I always experience that when I'm working as a psychotherapist. I always feel like the person is still there. The noetic dimension cannot fall ill, as Frankl said. Music is a wonderful, whatever you want to call it, ally support to get in touch with the one part in the human being that cannot fall ill. I strongly believe that. Thank you very much.
Eric, we have a few questions in the chat. If you would like to take a look at them, I can read them out loud in the time we have remaining, which is about 7 minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
So where to start with?
we can start with, I think, Bernadette. She doesn't have a question, but a statement. Beautiful presentation. I can attest that my piano playing during a time of grief and actually during palliative has been very consistent and relative to the nuance at the time, especially because my piano teacher naturally selects pieces that are that metaphorically translate, it seems, to the emotions and space that I have been in. It is interesting because other than my learning and playing Bach pieces, I have not wanted to listen to music or other sensational forms of media like movies, etc. And Sladjana Milosevic also said, beautiful presentation and thanks for sharing case study. So many new information and still a lot to learn about this. Thank you very much. And then we have someone who's Insoon Hoagland. I have integrated music and logotherapy as well, knowing that playing musical instruments is the bilateral stimulation of brain that brings healing as well as meaning. Playing musical instruments is part of eye movement desensitization reprocessing.
Absolutely.
And I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce the name. It's a Russian name, and I apologize for not being able to pronounce it. Thank you very much for the interesting presentation. How can we use music in practice? Turn on music during the session? How to choose music? Thank you. So we have a good question for you.
Yeah. If we take the thank you for the question. If we have the idea of Frankl, like the 3 pathways to meaning assisted by music, it is very important not to have an idea that there is one single music that's perfect for everybody. First important step is to find out which music is a good music, supportive music for the very individual client you're working with. There is not the one single solution. It's more like Frankl said, for each patient, we have got to find an individual language, and we have also maybe even got to find an individual therapy and to invent it. And it's the same with music.
You froze there, Eric. Can you back up? You said same with music and then froze.
Okay. Sorry. It is very important to find out which. I've got problems with my internet right now. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. It's very important to be in touch with the individual client to find out what is his or her favorite music. What is music he would like to do? What is music he would like or she would like to bring along into logotherapy? So that's something you could build on. And you could then start also to talk about the one person's biography. In which parts of the biography was music important? Why? Were there meaningful moments linked to music in one's biography? And why were these moments meaningful? And could we get in touch with this music again? And could we bring the music along right now in difficult times? Could we maybe make it accessible, and could you take it along with you in times of difficult or of crisis? So try to find out about the music of one individual person you are working with. And I'd say that's one important start of, or part to begin with. Let it grow then. I hope this gives a little bit of an answer to your question.
It's wonderful. I have a close friend who's close friends, and the husband has advanced Alzheimer's, and she's playing music for him. And Alzheimer's patients will recognize and know the words to songs, even if their memory and cognition is significantly impaired. Are there any other questions?
It is perfectly what Intum mentioned, that music, addresses both hemispheres in our head. And if the left side is damaged due to, or is falling ill due to Alzheimer or something else, we can get in touch through music with the right side, where the creative part is situated, and we can access that with music and bring language back. So even people suffering from aphasia, they can learn to talk again if we use music for the right side of the brain. They can't go shopping on their own, going back to language. If we learn language again and speaking with the aid of music, that's meaningful.
Thank you so much for your presentation and for your thoughtfulness, for your cases and examples. I very much appreciate your participating and adding to this Congress today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. It was such a great honor to be part of it, and for all your wonderful questions and your feedback. Thank you.
For those still with us, there are discussion groups that will be ongoing during the lunch break. Some of us will need to take a break, and others you're welcome to join the discussion groups. Thank you for being here.